me. Red in this light that isn't mine. Finding every reason you can find to question my love. Remember that it's not me. I was never the one who broke your heart. We both know I've been gentle from the start. So though the questions keep on coming this time, you know that I'll listen. You know I'll be patient with you, you're my baby. Maybe this time you'll know you can trust me. You'll know I'll be faithful to you, you're my baby. I was never cheating. You connected dots that weren't there. You gave attention to the thoughts I never wear. It's not my style, even though it's so clear to me. You shouldn't base the future on the past. I know you really want this thing to last. So though the questions keep on coming this time, you know that I'll listen. You know I'll be patient with you, you're my baby. Maybe this time you'll know you can trust me. You'll know I'll be faithful to you, you're my baby. Barking your bite now to prove that I'm right now, that you lost your sight now. I'm holding it tight now, can't see through the night. How to show you my light now, to paint these walls white now. I don't wanna fight now. You're barking your bite now to prove that I'm right now, that you've lost your sight now. I'm holding it tight now, can't see through the night. How to show you my light now, to paint these walls white now. So though the questions keep on coming this time, you know that I'll listen. You know I'll be patient with you, you're my baby. Maybe this time you'll know you can trust me. You'll know I'll be faithful. So though the questions keep on coming this time, you know that I'll listen. You know I'll be patient with you, you're my baby. Maybe this time you'll know you can trust me. You'll know I'll be faithful to you, you're my baby. 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 I don't wanna fight now. You're barking your bite now, to prove that I'm right now, that you've lost your sight now. I'm holding it tight now, can't see through the night. How to show you my light now, to paint these walls white now. Don't you hang up again, baby. I just can't be alone tonight. Don't you hang up again, baby. I just can't be alone tonight. Ticking like a bomb, falling in motion, center of the stage, hoping that we'll be right back again. You gotta help me out, riding coasters to dream your eyes. You gotta help me out, swim in oceans to breathe your life. Don't you hang up again, baby.
Check 1, check 2. Beauty. Let's get that cam on. Hey guys, how's it going today? I'm back with another class. Today we are talking about storytelling. Let me get my music turned down a tad. Let me know in chat if the music is too loud or way too quiet. It's hard to monitor on my end. So today we are talking about, well, storytelling. But we're also going to be talking about finding silver linings in tragedy, crisis, taking the bad and turning it into something that's a bit lighter, which is definitely something we could all use right now for sure. So I'm going to give us a few minutes for any stragglers to make their way into chat. And in the meantime, how's everyone doing today? I have hopefully an interesting class lined up. Then after this, I get to take a nice break. It's been 2 days straight of streaming, and it's I love it, but it's tiring. I have a nice 2,000-piece puzzle I get to work on after this, and some marking. So how's chat doing? Whether you're an enrolled student or you're just tuning in to check out the class, I do not mind. Yes, I saw your name in chat, Jesse. Glad to have you in my class. Feel free to contribute. There's no restrictions on who gets to participate. There's no restrictions on who gets to learn, right? Hopefully we have a few more people tune in. I'm going to give it, 5 minutes. So in the meantime, well, Jesse, since you're the only one who's jumped up in chat, and for anyone else who might overhear this, what's going on? How you killing time nowadays? That's awesome. I wholeheartedly admit I have never played the lottery once. Closest I've come is playing some bingo. But awesome. $10 is $10. I do play scratch cards occasionally. Mostly at Christmas when I get them for a gift. Beginner's luck then. First time playing the lotto. Let's see, we got 3 viewers in. Hopefully I get a few more. It's also hard to tell if my count is accurate or not. We'll see. All else fails, the show must go on. I'll keep teaching classes. Well, ultimately, you can't, if you're underage, you can't play the lottery anyways. We'll try not to taunt you, though. That is fair. There we go. I got a few more people tuning in. Yeah, and I'll give it another couple of minutes. So aside from, well, one of us playing a bit of lottery, how are we killing time? Like I said, I've been doing puzzles, and every week, as per usual, I've been playing Animal Crossing. Outside of that, because of the cold weather, I haven't been going out for my little walks too much. But it is what it is. Hopefully with the nicer weather, I'll be able to do some barbecuing, go for little strolls around the neighborhood. Okay, I see a few names in chat. Over the winter, my high school boyfriend and I went to casino in Niagara Falls. Someone gives 25 bucks in chips. Fair enough. I will say I don't necessarily condone gambling, but to each their own. So, the first thing I'm going to do today, we'll kind of slowly roll into class, let people catch up. The first thing we're going to do today is actually look at some good news stories. My mother, actually, of all people, showed me a resource that I did not know about called the Good News Network. And after doing some research, seeing that it's legit, I'll make it to affiliate before you. I do have a captive audience, that helps. I actually held a stream yesterday without a student body to tune in. And that actually went pretty well. I was doing some photo editing, and turned out with a lovely little photo of a butterfly that I cleaned up, and a photo of my friend Jess that I'm like half done. But I had a few people tune in. We chatted a bit. I called it a chat and chill stream, and I think I went for 2.5 hours. It was a lot of fun. But yes, getting back to it, the Good News Network is just a network of good news. All the articles are meant to uplift, inspire, cheer people up, which again, right now is something that I, at the very least, find myself needing, and I imagine most others can use as well. So we're going to look at a few stories from there and kind of dissect what makes for good news nowadays. So, anyone else who tunes in, please join us in chat. The more the merrier. In the meantime, I'm going to get started. So let's get this display going. There we go. I'm also going to... There we go. Until that gets in the way, I'm going to leave that box there so we can see chat all together. So, let's jump right over. Well, first of all, I'll start with Canvas. For those of you who have not seen my guide to getting on Canvas, it's on my YouTube channel. It's also, well, I have it strewn about here and there. So, within Canvas, we have our homepage or our modules page, and that will take us to this week's content. April 23rd, class Silver Linings. There you'll find the PowerPoint for today's class, the assignment I'm going to be assigning at the end of the day today, as well as a whole bunch of resources that we're going over right now, but this will let you refer back to them when you need them. I don't like... There we go. That's a bit better. So the first thing we're going to look at is, I give you a link to the Good News Network, but I'm starting off with one piece of news about a therapy dog tour. Yes, I said dog tour. So this dog, as well as its owner, have been delivering a bit of cheer and a bit of assistance to hospital workers. A very, very good boy. So essentially what happens is this dog, or this owner, is being live streaming video of her dog for medical workers, for when they get off shift, when they need a break, when they need to chill out. Think of it like those who have been to Mohawk College. We have therapy dogs come around every once in a while that people can just kind of approach and pet and hang out with. And that's awesome. It's a really good way to de-stress. And so the owner, Caroline Benzel, decided to do this with her dog Loki. What she also noticed while she was doing these live streams is a lot of these medical workers need assistance. They need like little healing kits, is how she put it. Things like moisturizer cream and stuff to help with sores from masks being worn all the time, cuts on ears from the elastics from masks. All these people are very worn out helping heal people, and so she thought she'd help heal them. And she's delivered, what's the number? They've completed over 1,400 kits but are closer to about 1,600 kits if you include the ones that aren't quite complete yet. Which is awesome. This is one person and her dog accomplishing all of this, as well as the people contributing. And it's all captured on Facebook. He is definitely a good boy. And this is one way, even just this one photo and a little caption is enough to cheer someone up, right? Never mind if you're actually accomplishing something, if you're fundraising, if you're working to help people. But even just one photo can cheer people up. I like to think the photo of the butterfly that I put out yesterday cheered one or two people up that saw it. And that's awesome. It's the least we can do right now, right? So I'm going to move into our next story, which is about, I forget what order. Yeah, I have it in the right order. Our next story is about IKEA. IKEA, because people have been bothering them for their, or not bothering them, but saying they wish they could go into store and go to the restaurant and have some meatballs. IKEA released a meatball recipe for its fans who are in quarantine. This is just a cute little PR bit that IKEA did, but it works with their brand. It's very cute. It's very light, and it helps cheer people up. The recipe is legit. I looked it over as someone who likes to cook. Your bog standard meatball recipe. But releasing something like this for them on Twitter just builds good faith with who their audience is. It lets everyone know that they're still there, and it also lets everyone know that they're not pretending a crisis isn't happening, a pandemic isn't happening, but they're trying to lighten it up a bit. And that's what we're going to do today. Our third story is a simple kind of guide. This is a very standard human interest story. This one's about you're stuck at home on Earth Day, which was yesterday. Here are some ways to connect with nature while in isolation, which is something we could all use. Not everyone has the luxury that I have. I live right on a nice big park and can just go for a little wander. So it's just a series of tips. Sharpen your observational skills. Take up birding, which is something you can do from inside or from your front step. In my area, we've recently come into a lot of woodpeckers, and so that's been fun to watch while I'm chilling on the back patio. Enjoy nature writing, films, documentaries. I myself have been watching a lot of the documentaries on Disney Plus recently, as they have National Geographic on there. And some of them are really good. Some are a bit brutal. Hostile Planet is something else. At the end of the day, anything you can do to lighten things up, even if you can just step outside for a minute and smell the diatoms, which is, it's a microorganism. It's the reason dirt smells like dirt. It's like why gardening smells so nice. It's been proven that kind of thing is good for your mental health, even just smelling it. Jesse, a couple of birds were hiding on my porch last week. Yeah, we have a few doves out front trying to make a nest on my stepdad's car. It's a valiant effort that will be thwarted at some point soon when we need to go get groceries. But this story is something you can cut together, and you don't really need to conduct interviews. You don't need to necessarily reference an expert. You can simply piece together little bits of good information from all over into one full article. And that article hopefully helps cheer people up or gives people an idea of how they can cheer themselves up. One last article that Miss Citrino actually sent me was about a photographer in Buffalo who's been doing, I won't play the video, but she's been doing a stay-at-home challenge as a photographer. She's been driving around and taking photos of willing participants of how they're coping with their isolation. They're staying at home. And some of the photos turn out Well, very, very cute. Let me actually, I pulled up her Instagram, which is linked at the end of the page. We just have these nice little photos that remind us that everyone who's locked up in their house is a person, is someone who is likely feeling the same way you're feeling, right? And that just because everything's a bit turbulent right now doesn't mean that we can't still smile. We can't still try to be ourselves. We have one photo here. I forget her caption. It was a teacher and her boys, her sons, dancing and singing happy birthday to a student who has to stay at home on her birthday. And that's just, it's sweet, right? So I do recommend checking out the links I've shared on Canvas. For those of you who don't have access to Canvas to see this, at the very least, this photographer is Jenny Lynn Photog. In fact, I will throw it in chat. Oh. Her husband ordered stuff at my store. I'm working at. Found it funny. That's awesome. Yeah, it's very interesting to see these awesome little things pop up. I'm going to quick throw this photographer's Instagram on here. There we go. That's her Instagram username. Yeah, I've heard it from many people that this kind of situation brings out the best in us and the worst in us. And I figure as a journalist, I have to focus on both. I have to pay attention to both, but not everyone has to. And on a bad day, sometimes it doesn't have to be 50-50. Sometimes you get that 10% bad news and don't want to deal with any more. And so fill the rest of your day with awesome stuff. And that's why I'm really trying to drive home this Good News Network, because it's just awesome stuff. Yes, I'll address that real quick, because I addressed it in my class yesterday, and it's worth talking about. So recently, in an example of bad news, there was a Mohawk instructor, much like myself, a part-time instructor from the sounds of it. He teaches JavaScript and Java coding, and he explained to his students that they shouldn't listen to social distancing rules. They shouldn't listen to the health precautions, that they should think for themselves, basically. First of all, I'll go ahead and say what he said is wrong. That's not a message to be having during a pandemic. This isn't a matter of political difference. This is a matter of life and death for some people. And that teacher was wrong because he shouldn't use his platform. He shouldn't be able to say to his students who have to be there and listen to him, something that puts not only their lives but others' lives in danger. He was wrong to do that. That's one of his students at the very least, or someone else, some other party that was privy to this information, shared it with the press. Mohawk is aware of it. They're doing an investigation or an internal dealing with this teacher. Someone said that is wrong, and someone spoke up, and that's really good of them. But like I said, the worst of some people comes out during this, and that's a very good example of that. My music's also kind of fitting to the tone of this conversation. But let's lighten it up again. So looking at Good News Network, I just pulled up the main page. We've got all sorts of awesome stories. Air pollution down. Fantastic grandmas have been spending retirement photographing venomous sea snakes for science. Like, what kind of story is that? That's awesome. Just a little piece on a 1,000-year-old cherry tree in Japan. We've got all sorts of things. One that interested me, let me see if I can find her. Yeah, there it is. Rube Goldberg's granddaughter, I guess, has put out a little contest, a little competition, little thing to do, asking people to build a machine that drops a bar of soap into their hand. That's cute. That's a very uplifting way to spend this time, right? And so today we're going to be talking about other ways that we can accomplish this, ways we can take little grains of awesome that go on in the world and turn them into big stories, turn them into something that we want to show off to people because we know it'll lift them up. So let's get into our actual lecture. I'm going to turn off that colored chat box. In fact, I'm going to turn off chat box for this segment. I can still see your chat. It's over in my second computer, but yeah, I'm just turning that off so we can see the lecture today. So today we're talking about, very simply put, silver linings and finding them. So last class we talked about the importance of interviews and how research is key to a good interview, and how nowadays, especially, remote interviews via Skype or via phone call or via all sorts of different tools are a necessity. They're super important right now because we can't just meet face to face, right? This isn't necessarily an interview, but same idea. I'm teaching a remote class because it's what we have to do. I like to think it works out pretty well. It's not as good as being in class, but it's a close second. So today, not digging this song. There we go. That's good enough for now. So today we're going to talk about media values. Media values, news values, you can call them whatever you want. The values are pretty much the same, whether you're working in hard news or just making a cool video. Then we'll talk about what human interest means and why it's important. We'll do a little case study of creating a human interest story, and then we'll talk about photo essays real briefly. And why your assignment now is a photo essay assignment. So think about this for a little bit. Feel free to shout out in chat your answer. It's all good by me. What responsibility do we have to cheer people up during a crisis? And where does that responsibility come from? So for myself as a journalist, my responsibility is to the facts. I need to tell the truth. That's my job. When I'm conducting journalism, I like to think it should be my job all the time. So what obligation do I have to make sure that my facts are all happy facts? Or that every time I give a bad fact, a sad one, I have to complement it with a happy one? It's very commonplace in journalism that at the end of your newscast, you finish with a happy story, a human interest story, something fun. My one instructor, Dave Smiley, uses the phrase "cue the water skiing squirrel," which is the idea of, okay, we're all done with the hard news, let's throw on the little cute story about the water skiing squirrel just to cheer everyone up. So within journalism, and especially during a time of crisis, it's more important than ever to keep people happy, not only because we need it, it's important, it's we're all in this together, we need to ourselves be happy, but also because from a journalistic perspective or even a media perspective, if we're bumming everyone out during a sad time, they're not going to come back and see the next thing we want to show them. And a lot of the time, the next thing we want to show them is important. It's not just about making money or getting views. It's about, in journalism especially, that next piece of news could be crucial. And if everyone's bummed out and doesn't want to watch, then we've lost. So let's talk about why stories need value. In media, we're we're constantly trying to figure out what stories will be of interest to the audience, what they'll watch, what they'll be interested in, what they need to know. That's a decision we have to make. We often use different kinds of guidelines to determine that. There's all sorts. I've compiled a few for this lecture. These guidelines we typically call news values or media values. And if a story checks off a couple of these, it's a good bet your story is going to run well. Again, whether this is a video that you're putting together for the community or it's a written news story that you're putting together for a local newspaper, doesn't really matter. The ideas are all the same. So, here are a couple of them. We have impact. The more impact a story has, the more valuable it is to our audience. The more people influenced by it, the more people affected by what's going on, the more important the story. That's why COVID is such a big story, because it's all over the world. Everyone's impacted. A good example is a strike at a bakery where the local bakers don't want to bake anymore, or they're looking for a raise or whatever, is not nearly as important to most people as a nationwide postal strike or a teacher strike, which is something that had been going on. As well, timeliness. If I put out a story right now about, let's say, the teacher strike that was going on, it doesn't have as much value as a story about something that happened last night. And for us in media, in news, it's especially valuable if we can get a story first. If we can be the first to drop it, and we call that a scoop. We've scooped up the story from out of the hands of everyone else. We got first dibs. And that's an incredibly valuable thing to have, and something you don't want to waste. Next up, we have prominence. People in the public eye are of more news value, of more media value than obscure people, most of the time. A good example is Tom Hanks having coronavirus is more prominent than my neighbor having coronavirus. They don't, knock on wood. But if I ran two stories, one about each of those, Tom Hanks would get the views. Proximity is also important. If I ran a story about your neighbor having coronavirus, it's going to mean something to you because it's so close to you. Or even, let's talk about good stories. If I ran a story about your neighbor is raising money for ventilators for people, that's going to mean more to you than some guy in Scotland doing that exact same thing. Let's see. Jesse, speaking of, allegedly Canada Post isn't delivering packages anymore. Interesting. I'll have to look into that. Curious to see if that's true. It could have huge implications if it is. Moving on. Bizarreness. And the reason I chose a camel for this icon is because I couldn't think of a more odd icon to use. There's not exactly a bizarre icon. Bizarreness. The best example of a bizarre story being effective is the idea of two headlines. One is Dog Bites Man. The other, in the article right next to it, is Man Bites Dog. One of those is more bizarre for sure, and one of those is going to drive more interest for our audience. In this case, Man Bites Dog is an interesting headline. Dog Bites Man is pretty commonplace. Finally, conflict. Conflict is... There's a lot of value in conflict. Two people, entities, groups, teams opposing one another, fighting with one another, stepping up against each other in conflict is valuable. It's not always the happiest news, but it can also... We don't have to view this as a fist fight or a war, even though those do have news value. This can be a sports game. That's conflict. This could be a popsicle stick bridge building competition for local high schools. That's conflict. And the more we play into that conflict, the more interesting the story tends to be. We try not to go overboard with it. But that's every story we've ever read, every piece of fiction has conflict in it. That's the story arc that we look at. That's the story circle from Dan Harmon that we looked at a few classes ago. Conflict sells stories. And in the case of real stories, factual stories, it's worth its weight in gold in a lot of regards. Usefulness is always a big one. This is less pertinent to media per se. Tutorial videos, though, for example, are an example of usefulness. Different cooking videos. That's a great example. The Food Network, outside the competition shows, which are conflict, the Food Network is a great example of a network built on useful video. Presumably, if we all have the time and the ingredients to make the food, it's useful. In news, easily the two most useful segments on any show ever, radio or TV, are weather reports and traffic reports. And the reason those are important is because people check them right when they're going out the door. It's relevant to them the moment they step outside or the moment they get on the highway. That is the best example of usefulness you will ever find in news. But even right now, with COVID-19, there's a lot of medical news going out that's of use to people. There's a lot that's not. There's a lot of misinformation out there, but the stuff that's accurate is important. Currency is also, COVID's another good example there, in that currency is a lot like timeliness in that you need to be quick with your stories, but every story has an arc. Every topic has its time in the spotlight and it has its time in the shadows. Political stories are a very good example. Political stories run way better. Political videos run way better during an election year than any other time. A video about washing your hands is more useful now and more watched now than it has been in the last, I would wager, 20 years. Part of that's the internet's a lot bigger, but because things are pertinent now, we need to focus on those subjects that are relevant. Ultimately, the goal is to dig up a story that creates a whole new subject you can dig into and makes that relevant. A good example is when we're watching TV, watching stuff on Netflix. Funny enough, Jesse commented, Carol Baskin, talking about Tiger King is really relevant right now. Talking about it probably a year from now, not so much. So currency is very important. Now, moving on to the idea of human interest. It's our first responsibility in media rather than news, to entertain. That's our job. We need people to watch. We need people to be interested. We need to keep them entertained. When we do this while simultaneously delivering real facts, talking about real goings on, we tend to call this content human interest. There's all sorts of stories out there. I think one example I used for my class last year was about the man who invented the breed Labradoodle, regretting every decision he made in inventing the breed Labradoodle. Don't ask me why he regretted it, he just did. That's a human interest story. It's entertaining, it's very different, and it's real. It's all factual. This content balances providing information, entertainment, and it usually tends to pique audience interest by being strange or different, or indulging that bizarre news value. Human interest stories also tend to touch on subjects that are evergreen. That Labradoodle story will be relevant from now, like as much now as it was a year ago. It's not a story that's going to lose interest. It's not a story that's going to die off. We can always talk about how the guy who invented the Labradoodle regrets it. There's all sorts of other examples too. There we go. One thing we have to consider when creating human interest, or really anything, is how we can add value. We should always be trying to do this. You need to ask yourselves, are there perspectives I'm not considering? How else can I look at my subject beyond what I'm doing right now? Are there unanswered questions? That's a big thing in news. Never leave a question just dangling there. And can the story be connected to a bigger picture? Whether in this video or the next one I make. This is always something you need to consider. You always need to be striving for more. Whenever you can. And so let's talk about silver linings. One of the hardest things to approach from media, from an entertainer's perspective, is tragedy, crisis, bad news. You might want to acknowledge it without being, without bumming out your audience, without being a drag. And the best approach is using a silver lining story, finding something in the tragedy that's worth talking about, worth smiling about. So let's kind of look at how we might accomplish this. By the way, if you have any questions, feel free to shout out in chat. You can @ me, and I'll notice it even more, but chat's going pretty slow, so I'll probably notice it anyways. So in our case study, first thing we have to consider is our lead, the thing that tips us off to there being a story here. In this case, you heard from a family member that a friend of a friend, an 89-year-old grandmother, has spent the previous week making over 600 cloth masks while only listening to the Beatles. When she wasn't sleeping or eating, she was sitting there sewing masks. It's a good little story, especially a good local story. But how do you dig into it? Ultimately, this is our lead. A lead is the rumor you hear, the piece of news you witness. It's a seed that could grow into a full story. It's your initial idea. And leads come from all over. I can give you a million little pieces of advice for how to find a lead, but really the best advice is talk to people. Don't be afraid to ask people what's going on in their lives. There was one teacher in my program in journalism who's no longer in the program. He's since retired. But he used to take the bus everywhere. And he was the guy who would sit down next to you and actually talk to you on the bus. He was that weirdo. And what that did for him was it gave him leads. It gave him ideas for stories. He knew what was going on in the city and what was affecting people because he was talking to them. So talking to people is key, and thinking creatively is key. Taking that one little seed and extrapolating a full story idea from it takes work and it takes effort. And so thinking creatively is key to this kind of thing. Finally, you have to think about what you hear and ask whether you see it becoming something great. Ask if it's worth fleshing out. Not every lead you get is worth pursuing, but occasionally one comes around and you can't afford to just put it down. Next up, we have the research, the planning. So your lead has you intrigued, and you ask the relative for more information about this grandmother. You ask where she lives, what her name is, if you can talk to the friend who knows this woman. You try to find out everything you can about your lead. You then spend time thinking about what your final product will look like. You know that there's this woman. You know you can't necessarily go meet her in person because of everything that's going on. So you have to think, how am I going to flesh this out and do a full piece? So before you pick up your camera and your microphone, you need to do your research. You need to come up with a plan. Find out as much as you can and figure out an idea of what you want the finished product to be. And this will all give you this path you can walk down that will guide you through all of this. Now, of course, you have to be flexible with it. Things change. But if we look back to last class about how you prepare for an interview, what research you do, what planning you do, most of the same considerations apply. Next up, we have the execution, the actual filming and creation of our piece, right? So you can't meet with her in person for obvious reasons. You chat with her online and set up a Skype call and film it. Lucky enough, she lives in a nursing home, and her nurse is able to take a few photos of her while she's doing her work, of her holding up the masks she made, and send them to you. you now have everything you need to cut together a decent little video. You have interview footage, you have audio from her, you have her holding up the masks. You can choose to leave yourself in the video or cut yourself out. You have all this stuff to piece together some final product. So between your research and your plan, you have everything you need to create your story. Sometimes you have to be flexible in your approach, especially right now. We can't necessarily break out the really good cameras. We can't break out a lighting kit, go over and set up a full studio setup. Sometimes it's going to be a matter nowadays of breaking out your cell phone and just filming any way you can. Using your cell phone, for example, as a mic, which I taught you guys last week. Sorry, I just saw the news on my phone. That said, you want to try to execute your plan as quickly as possible. You don't want to get caught up in the plan too much, because the longer you have this scoop, the more likely you are to lose the scoop. So try to make your piece as quick as possible. After that, it's a matter of sharing it. It's a matter of getting your work out there. I actually held a class yesterday about a social journalism class, about getting your brand and your product out there for your audience. Out there for your audience to see. If you wanted to go to my YouTube, which is in a link at the bottom of my description for Twitch, you can go back and watch that class. I honestly believe I gave some pretty good tips for getting your work out there, especially video, photography, that kind of thing, using social media. Shameless plug. So let's talk about photo essays. I talk about how we have to be flexible. Things are a bit different. We can't just set up a full shoot nowadays. And that's very true. Photo essays are something we can do. A photo essay is simply a collection of photos, a series of photos that tell a story. It's one option for how we can maintain social distance and still create something worthy of calling good media. This lets us minimize our time with the subject. If I wanted to, let's say, with this grandmother who makes masks, I could try to set up a meeting with her where we meet outside on the little patio for her retirement home or wherever she lives. She could do her work there, and I could shoot photos of it from 6, 10, 12 feet away. It's not ideal. I'd love to meet the person in person, do a close-up, sit-down interview, but I'll make do with what I can. And I'm lucky enough to have a good zoom on my camera. Most cell phones shoot high quality. This is one way we can get out and do our work as media, but still maintain social distance and be very careful. It'll still offer an intriguing final product, and at the end of the day, a big part of a successful photo essay is the planning as much as it is the shooting. It's having an idea of what you want to shoot photos of before you go out. Not every photo essay works this way. Some are spur of the moment. But nowadays, planning is key. So, I have a few examples that I'm going to pull up, just of quick little photo essays. First of all, the woman in Buffalo is a very good example of a photo essay. They're not necessarily all tied together, but her photos tell a story. Her photos have a meaning. It's a photo project of sorts. So let's look at Art Gallery of Ontario Infinity Mirrors exhibit. I just need to pop it over to my other screen. There we go. So this is an art exhibit that went on at Art Gallery of Ontario last year, the year before. I was actually in Toronto at the time. It's by a Japanese artist, Yayoi Kuwasama. She works with mirrors and little sculptures, and creates these weird landscapes all in one small room. So this photographer went and shot photos of her different exhibits, of her different pieces, and gave descriptions. This is a very good example of a photo essay. It's super straightforward. Shanti, oh, I love her. Yes, her work is fantastic. She's a very eclectic pop artist. Very different. And we'll actually see a photo of her at the end of this. But this is very straightforward in that there's not a ton of research you need to do. Might talk to the artist, might grab information from the blurb at the museum, but it's all about the photos you shoot. So each of these is a different room the artist is shooting into, or the photographer is shooting into. And it's just a whole set of mirrors. And typically a little box that you look through, because you can see the photographer here shooting the photo. And again, what makes this more of a photo essay than just a gallery is the description, is the writing, is the captioning. And that's something worth remembering for sake of the assignment coming up. Like, look at that. That's gorgeous. And this isn't like it's a good quality photo, but a lot of this is the beauty of what this artist or what this photographer has found to capture as a subject. It's naturally designed to be beautiful because this artist has put all this work into it. This one is my particular favorite, All the Eternal Love I Have for Pumpkins. And that's Kusama herself, a very, again, eclectic and interesting woman. Yeah, so this photo essay was honestly probably pretty easy to cut together. It's very straightforward. Let's look at another example. There we go. So this one, very dear to my heart, is, well, the title is 12 Gorgeous Photos of What Toronto Hip Hop Looked Like Before Drake. In a time I very much love. So this photo essay doesn't necessarily, no one necessarily planned to shoot all these photos and capture them in a photo essay dozens of years later. But someone saw all these photos that were already taken and thought, I'll compile it. So again, we have these descriptions in between describing what we're seeing in the photo. And we can just follow Toronto hip hop all the way through the 90s. And I do recommend you download the PowerPoint for today's class. Go back to these examples and look through them. Give them a read. This will give you a good idea of how to turn a couple of photos into something much greater than that. So our final example is honestly a fairly small example. It was a photographer in Toronto wanting to celebrate the diversity of the city with portraits of mixed race families. There's a quick description of the project itself, and then just a collection of some of the photos he shot. And they're beautiful little photos, and the descriptions, family 2, their names, their ethnicities, and then the person who's compiling this article is throwing in description in the middle. But really, the captions for this photo essay don't need to be anything more than who is in the photo, because the entire intention is who is in the photo. That's the entire purpose of this essay. So, and the other thing to note was, at least at the time of writing this, we had the photographer is actually looking at photographing 3 generations of the same family. like building a little photographic family tree. So these photo essays are all pretty straightforward, all pretty basic, and good examples of what we're going to be working on for your next assignment, the one I'm assigning today. But first, in summary, we use media values to determine whether a story is worth telling, to figure out whether it's interesting, to figure out whether we should bother. Planning a human interest story is all about, at least in times like today, is all about finding the silver lining, finding the interest, finding that thing that makes you smile on a cruddy day. It's also all about the planning. A lot of planning goes into this kind of thing. It's not necessarily just I'll pick up my camera and go. Especially nowadays because of, well, everyone being stuck at home. Finally, photo essays are a quick way to tell a visual story with minimal tools. It's something we can do with a little bit of planning. And one of these, we can create a photo essay. Which now brings me to our newest assignment. I'm going to pull it up. So, if you have any questions about the assignment, I'll answer them at the end. I'm just going to run through this real quick. So this assignment is a photo essay. I want you to take a bad situation, COVID-19 in this case. I want you to showcase it in some sort of positive light. Find some sort of silver lining. Specifically, I'm asking you to create a short photo essay. I want the subject of your essay to relate to COVID-19 in a positive light. So part 1 of this assignment. All these parts are very small. I just wanted to put them in order. Part 1 is identify your subject. You could consider this like the title of your photo essay. It's going to determine what photos you shoot. I want your subject to relate to COVID-19 in a positive light. This could be something positive that someone's doing that you know. Again, I will say any photography you do, maintain social distance, be very safe, wear a mask, don't be reckless. And this person doesn't have to be someone across town. This person can be your neighbor, your mom in your own house. It could be your sister. It could be a family member. It doesn't matter as long as it's positive. So it could be something positive someone's doing. It could be how you and your family cope with having to stay home. I gave students in one of my other classes an assignment where they had to do an Instagram story, very similar to a photo essay. And a lot of them talked about how they were spending time with their dad cooking or spending time with their mom making art. That's a perfectly valid subject. You could even do an informative piece, like say, just a quick photo essay on the steps of washing your hands or sanitizing a mask or anything like that. If it's going to be informative, you want to make sure it's accurate. You want to make sure the information is right. But that's a really quick way to throw something together that people will find useful, which is one of our news values. A good rule of thumb is when you're choosing your subject, look to the news values that we went over today. If it fits in one or two of those, there's a good bet you've got a good subject. So next, I want you to shoot at least 5 photos of the story for your subject. These photos should be of good quality. I'm not asking you to shoot Pulitzer Prize winning photos. You don't need to break out a DSLR. But I don't want you to hand me 5 cruddy looking selfies either. I want you to put a bit of effort into this. You can also send me more than 5 photos. Don't go crazy with it. But if you send me 10 photos because you really like the project, go ahead. All you need to do is give me 5 though. Each of your photos needs to have a caption. Your caption doesn't necessarily have to say what's going on in the photo. It can explain how your photo relates to the subject if that's unclear. Your captions are what are going to give you this narrative. Pardon me, I hit my mic. They're going to give you this narrative path that I'm going to follow. Finally, as per usual, pretty much every one of my assignments, I want you to write just a short approximately 100 word reflection. Just how your photos turned out, what it was like to do this activity. Think about what went well, what could have gone better. If you go over the 100 words, that's no problem. Again, don't go crazy with it. And you don't have to go over 100 words. But yeah, that's your assignment. Pretty straightforward. What I want you to give me is a Word document. The Word document will have your name, your subject, your captions, and your reflection. Then you're also going to submit to me your photos as JPEGs, and I ideally want you to name them your last name, then a number, so I know what order to look at them in. I phrased that sentence wrong, but oh well. Also on this this outline is your rubric, where you'll get your marks. Keep in mind this assignment is worth 20% of your final mark. I'm actually going to pull up Canvas right now real quick just to show you where to find all this. So on Canvas, there are two places you can find this information. The first is under Assignments and Tests on your Home tab. You can click the Photo Essay Assignment. That will bring you to this page, which has all the information I just gave you, and your rubric right here. This is where you're going to submit your assignment. That said, beyond that, pardon me, we go back home. In the April 23rd class folder, where all the information for today is, we have the Word document that I just showed you. You can download that, you can save it wherever you want on your computer, and we have a link to the exact same page I just showed you. If you run into any trouble, you have my email address. If you run into any trouble submitting and need to submit via email, that's cool too. But I figured I might as well show you where all this stuff can be found. At present, do we have any questions? At this point, I'm pretty much winding down. That's about all we got for today's class. Nothing too crazy. How's everyone feeling about this? I figure y'all are media students. We shouldn't have too much problem shooting 5 photos. Plus, I've been giving you a lot of writing lately, and I figure this is a good way to break out of that for a little bit. As well, for those who don't may or may not have questions, I'm also curious, is there any good news you have come across that you'd want to that you think others in chat might want to know about? Nothing you do for your assignment, just news articles you've wandered across. Let's switch to cam for now. There we go. Oh, the other thing I wanted to do while we're here is there we go. I just figured, call it a shameless plug, but I just wanted to once again remind you guys that 6ix9ine got out of jail. I don't know if that's a good thing or not. I don't imagine it's a good thing, but I don't know enough about the situation to really say. What I am going to do is take a quick minute to once again mention that on Wednesdays at 5 p.m. I'm holding classes now. Completely open class. Just on my own time to teach digital creative skills. Some days that'll be photo editing, some days that'll be video editing, some days that might be animation. Who knows? We'll see once I have a bit of an audience what they want to see. But I figured I'd show off what we wound up with yesterday during my photo editing stream. There we go. So I edited 2 photos. This was the second one, which I actually fully completed. yeah, so that's I spent about an hour editing together that photo and just giving some tips on how I accomplished it. Figured I'd share. So again, if you're interested, feel free to tune in Wednesdays at 5 p.m. It's very casual, more chat and chill. Thank you. I think it's Sarah. Thank you. Yeah, I shot. What's awesome is I have a whole database of photos that I shot in the last year that I have not gotten around to editing. And so I'm just taking my time to go through them. And this I shot last late spring, early summer. Actually right downtown Hamilton. There's a little a very old house there. I forget its name, but it has a beautiful back garden. And I managed to catch this photo. Let's open chat box again. Yeah, that's fine. So, getting back to it, does anyone have any questions about the assignment? Thank you. I am lucky enough to have a nice camera that captures some nice close-up photos. It's actually a pretty close crop of the photo too. It was originally much larger. So does anyone have any questions about the assignment, about what we've gone over today? Like, this is our chance to just chat. I'm going to be on for probably another 10 minutes, unless no one shouts out. How's everyone doing? Let's do this too. There we go. Now I'm not blocking the photo. Yes, the new update for Animal Crossing has come out. I have not managed to get my hands on the game today yet. The Switch in my household is being split between 3 people. But I'm very excited to get playing probably pretty soon after I'm done on stream today. I have a few little errands to do, and then I'll be right on the Switch. But actually, one of my... Oh, I'm alright getting through everything. I don't know if I should be saying playing Minecraft in the background. At the end of the day, you're participating in class. Speaking as someone with ADD, having something else to do at the same time helps me focus. So I'm not going to dock marks. I'm not going to yell at you. No worries there. And at the end of the day, there are people who aren't able to tune in for the live class, and they can look back at the video that I put on YouTube, the video that I put on Canvas. There's a reason that I offer all these different ways to get to class, because I can't know what anyone's individual situation looks like right now. So if you need to play Minecraft, or if you want to play Minecraft in the background, I can't stop you. I'm not going to blame you. Plus, Minecraft is fun. I haven't played that one in time. Also going to bump up the music a little bit. Not in volume, just in glitch hop. There we go. I don't know why Isabelle is such a meme from Animal Crossing. She has been for a while at this point. Because she's cool. Indeed, Isabelle is cool. So, here's a question for anyone who's still in chat. Next week, I've earmarked class as student interest content, whatever you guys want to learn. Unfortunately, I haven't heard back too much from you guys on what you want to learn. So first of all, if you have anything you want to learn, shout out. Could be a media skill. It could be a storytelling skill. Whatever you want to learn, let me know. Slow-mo editing, okay. What's a tough one? I'll have to figure out how to film. I can film stuff in slow-mo. It's a matter of what I can film right now. Maybe my cats. I could definitely touch on that. I can touch on the value of playing with different frame rates, playing with different speeds for footage. I was also thinking at some point I might do a lesson on photojournalism for you guys. Very similar to your photo essays, but a little bit more in depth and looking into photojournalists from the past. Honestly, any video editing techniques. That's awesome to know. In fact, I'm going to make a note on my loose piece of paper. Slow-mo. Or animation, okay. Animation's a tough one in that, like, it takes a lot of time. But I could probably work on the odd animation technique. Like this type of thing. That's a tough one. Floating popcorn. I'm trying to think how they did that shot. I'll have another look on it. Or I'll have another look at it, see if I can accomplish something like that. My friend, actually, funny enough, sent me a video. Let me see if I can pull it up. Because this is a technique that I could do. Yeah. So I have no idea where this video came from. My friend just sent it to me. But this one I could absolutely, not in this format, but I could do something using this kind of technique. It's actually a fairly simple technique too. Yeah, I have a few different techniques, a few different special effects that we could play with in video editing. I definitely have a bit of food for thought as far as what we'll learn in next class. I'm going to say there's a chance of photojournalism, there's a chance of video editing techniques, including slow-mo. We'll see how much I can get prepared. Either way, we have a few student interest classes in the coming days, and so we can definitely get around to a few different subjects. So with that, I think, wish we could finish our trailers. I know, I really wish I could see the finished product on that. That said, there's no reason to not use the tools at hand to just create. I tell it to my audio video students who are, well, I'm no longer currently teaching them. But whenever you have a chance, just make stuff, just create, just whip out the camera and film. Sometimes it'll be good, sometimes it'll be bad, but at least you're keeping yourself on top of things, right? It's what I do with photos all the time. But with that, I'm going to call this, with this video playing off to my side, I'll I'm going to call an end to stream for today, end to class for today. Thank you all for tuning in. Thank you all for participating. Chat was actually kind of talking this week as opposed to last week, which is great. And I look forward to seeing you guys next week. Stay safe, stay informed about what's going on, and please make sure to wash your hands. Have a good one, guys.
Mm-hmm.